Feel free to add your name to the chat function. We could network a little bit after. Thank you everyone for sharing, for coming by today.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started now. So like Justin said, feel free to update your name if you guys would like. Thank you guys so much for coming. It's gonna be probably a small group, but it looks like it. So hopefully we could just have a more of like a discussion based, like open talk. Please ask any questions. If you guys have any, stop us at any moment. We're totally happy to answer any questions you guys have. So thank you guys so much for coming. My name is Aaron Rivera. I'm an educational leadership consultant, and I'll be presenting the webinar for preparing for the fall term, along with my colleagues, Sarah Earl and Jasmine Flores. So what does it mean to operate in person? So as chapters begin to make a transition from virtual to hybrid or in-person operations, there's bound to be a lot of change to occur. This change can be seen in simple things such as brotherhood, how meetings are held, or how you plan events. In terms of brotherhood, depending on the chapter, there is a possibility that some brothers never met another brother in person before, or haven't even seen a brother in over a year. This brotherhood dynamic can change tremendously when beginning to meet in person. How is your chapter helping to make that transition easier? Is the chapter planning brotherhood events in the beginning of the term to make everyone comfortable with one another? Are you doing a team builder or brotherhood activity at one of the early chapters? Doing something as simple as a team builder can help with that transition and help brothers build relationships with one another. As we all can probably contest, virtual meetings was an adjustment in terms of how we operated. So it's safe to assume that it will be an adjustment when going back to in-person or in hybrid operations. Especially with chapters having brothers who never experienced an in-person chapter before, it might be a good idea to remind everyone what are Robert's rules and how they are utilized and how would they be implemented in chapter meetings. Similar to chapter meetings looking different, the types of events the chapter might want to organize will be different as well. How does a community service event look now that the chapter is in person or hybrid? But also, what do we learn from the virtual meetings that we can bring into in-person or hybrid procedures? This could be having a virtual guest speaker for a professional event while the attendees are in person. Or this can be having some events completely virtual while others be completely in person. Another factor that may change when going into hybrid or in person would be the chapter's budgeting. So budgeting for your chapter's money. With the process of transitioning to in-person activities, there's a lot of opportunities to elevate your chapter's operations that weren't present in the solely virtual environment. When taking into account the new activities that the chapter might embark, funding is a factor that might occur. Funding is a factor that the chapter needs to take into account. What is the chapter's fundraising plan for the fall? A lot of chapters had issues fundraising in the virtual environment, so what is your chapter doing to combat that? A discussion your chapter might want to have is, should we make an event virtual or should we make an event in person? Should we keep this event virtual to save money? Or if the event is in person, what can we do to limit the cost? Some things that may come into play in terms of funding would be free food, flyers for advertisement, business cards, recruitment shirts, tabling decor, if you do not know where your previous tabling decor is, and just certain things like that that might come into play now that we're transitioning to in-person or hybrid procedures. Some additional fees that each chapter will be expecting to pay is the regalia fee and the travel fund, which will be collected each fall and spring term. Besides fundraising, a portion of the chapter funds come from member dues. Did these dues change when you went to a virtual environment? Do you even know what your dues were when you had in-person procedures, or do you have to look through your chapter records? Or are you planning to charge the same dues as in the virtual environment? These are things that the chapter should be discussing. Something that should not affect the chapter funds directly would be the initiation fees. That should be collected from every initiate prior to their initiation. These initiation fees should cover their national fees, badge lease fees, the Crown and Delta, and supplies. Your chapter should keep in mind a date to collect these fees from pledges, ensuring that chapter has plenty of time to collect and pay off these fees. But outside of just fundraising, the chapter should be aware of the process behind obtaining this money. Does the chapter have a procedure through the VPF, president, on how to request money, or is your money connected through the school, which has their own procedures? Also, on these procedures, what is the time frame? Once you know this time frame, how can that impact the chapter's timeline in planning for an event? So outside of just planning for your own events, you also should be preparing for upcoming national events. Some major events that are coming up are leads and GCCs. A quick reminder that each chapter is required to have one delegate at each of these events. We're planning on having these events in person, meaning that these events should be considered when planning the chapter's budget. Due to the pandemic, we have an unusual case where we have back-to-back grand chapter congresses. This also means a lot more expenses than usual. When trying to budget for some national events, here are some approximate prices based on previous leads. Registration for lead is approximately $90 to $100 if done within the time frame. Hotels are approximately $120 per night, and chapters tend to stay for 2 nights. With these estimated prices, that is a total of about $340 for registration and hotel, and this is not including the travel to get to lead or the food. I do not have an estimate for Grand Chapter Congress pricings. However, it tends to be a lot more expensive, especially since depending where you are, you might have to travel a lot further to attend GCC. These expenses can really hurt a chapter if not planned accordingly. So please take these upcoming events into account, especially when discussing the chapter's funds.
Hi, everyone. So first, we're going to go into what are your university guidelines? An important portion of preparing for your fall term is understanding what your university guidelines are going to look like. As safety protocols surrounding the pandemic continue to update by the day regarding different variants, it's important to stay consistently informed by how your state and university are planning to operate as we move closer to the fall semester. In the event that your university does have sort of a hybrid in-person option for students returning in the fall, knowing how to arrange your meeting spaces for things such as your chapter meetings, your pledging ceremony, any events will be crucial. Ask yourself if your university has a form or alternate avenue of ensuring such reservations. Next, you want to make sure that you are in unison with any gathering policies in effect as stated in your local and university official guidelines. Making sure you are aware of these policies beforehand can help your chapter plan and execute a proper and safe fall term. Next, you want to make sure you are up to date with your university's recruitment guidelines in place for all student organizations. Is there a certain period of time organizations are or are not allowed to recruit? Are there designated places recruitment must take place? Finding the answers to these questions will help solidify the necessary conditions that need to be factored into creating a proper recruitment period. Lastly, you're going to want to find out if your university has certain requirements organizations must uphold. And if so, what are they? Some examples of requirements we have seen at universities include a minimum GPA requirement for active members, a minimum amount of events reported to the university, or even the attendance of a regularly scheduled Greek organization meeting. It is important that if your university does have these requirements, your chapter knows about it, and you can plan accordingly to stay on good standing with your university as well. So next, we want to go into what's new and returning in CMP for the fall. We wanted to touch on some of these new and familiar items so that you'll know what you're seeing when you look at the CMP this year. First, you will notice that professional events will return to 7 professional event requirements, along with community service events returning back to 6 service events. You will also notice the addition of the diversity assessment located under Tier 2 Chapter of Recognition requirements. This will be a form questionnaire that will be available shortly to be filled out at any time between the time it populates in the hub and the due date of December 15th. Next, you will also see a new Tier 1 accredited chapter requirement, which is maintaining a chapter of 20 dues-paying members. Credit will switch to not approved if at any time after fall dues are due, the number of dues-eligible members drops below 20. Lastly, there have been revisions made to the no debt requirement on the hub. To obtain the accredited chapter requirement, a chapter must have no 90-day debt. To obtain chapter of recognition, a chapter must have no 60-day debt. And then lastly, to obtain chapter of excellence, a chapter must have no 45-day debt. These statuses of these requirements may change at any time if future invoices are not paid within their respective timeframes. So next, while looking at this slide, also note, feel free to screenshot. This is going to be your CMP focus for the fall. You'll notice the main requirements you should be focusing on for your fall term by tier. There are a few items that are early action requirements that I do want to touch on tonight so that you can plan a successful CMP year accordingly. First, looking at accredited Tier 1 requirements, you want to make sure that you are filling out your fall officer report. This report will open up on August 1st and will be available to be submitted up until 14 days after the start of your school term. Looking at chapter of recognition, tier requirements, your fall membership status report can be filled out anytime between November 1st and December 15th. This report takes into consideration any membership changes the chapter saw throughout their fall term. If the chapter does not have any membership changes to record between this timeframe, the chapter can email hub@dsp.org to confirm no membership changes to receive credit for this objective. Then, looking at Chapter of Excellence tier requirements, your fall pledging ceremony ritual memorized requests will need to be filled out within 14 days after your chapter's pledging ceremony. It is important that your chapter plans for pledging ceremony early to ensure a seamless, organized, and memorized ceremony. While there are many important items to consider when looking at this fall term list, I would highly encourage everyone here tonight to join us for a deeper look at these requirements in our Setting Yourself Up for CMP Success webinar, which will be on September 8th. More information on this event will be in your email and also on the website shortly. So now diving a little bit deeper into chapter bylaws and policies and procedures, you want to ask yourself the following questions as we prepare for our fall term. Do your current documents reflect how your chapter plans to operate? When did you last update these documents? And also, what items in your documents that are you looking to change, and how can you do that? Answering these questions will be important pieces to having updated and approved chapter bylaws and PMPs. Any changes made to your documents should be discussed and voted on by members of your executive committee. A best practice for this action would also be to next relay the information to your chapter members, not a part of the executive committee, so that they can stay informed of edits. Also, another tool you can utilize in your chapter is the ad hoc committee. This is a committee that is designed to be set up with a few individuals from the chapter whose main focus would be to prepare and suggest any edits made to either of these documents.
All right, when preparing to conduct your pledge education program this term, I would highly recommend that your Vice President of Pledge Education reviews and reads through all the guides and resources available on the website. These resources are also sent to the VPPE through email. When you go on our website and you search Pledge Education Program, it should be the second link that pops up when you look up those words, and it will take you directly to the page as screenshot on the slide in front of us. And all the resources are available on there, from the different pledge meetings, from the modules that the pledges are completing. So in regards to the pledge education program, it has not changed in any way from the past year. So all pledges are required to fulfill the same requirements. Pledges are still required to attend all chapter meetings and the same activities that brothers are required to attend. However, there are no pledge exclusive events except pledge meetings. With all of this in mind, Keep in mind that there is a 6-hour limit of fraternity activities for the week in regards to pledges going from Sunday through Saturday. We understand that the pledge education program that was submitted and approved prior to the start of the term may change in regards to, maybe you find out a little bit more about your campus regulations in regards to recruitment, just as Sarah stated. You find out a little bit more, maybe you have to move your dates around a little bit. Maybe your executive committee decides to expand recruitment efforts. No problem at all. Just send us your dates, and one of us, somebody within the chapter service team, will review and approve your pledge education program. Now, to see the exact dates that we have on file, you could go on to the hub, click on the dashboard module, and click on the pledging/initiation tab. So this is where you see the approved programs and all the dates and information in regards to pledge education. Lastly, all pledges are required to receive a physical copy of the pledge manual called the Crown Delta. So be sure that these are ordered in a timely manner so that pledges receive a copy during the first pledge meeting. This can also be ordered on the hub. All right, just like everything else that you're preparing this upcoming term, ritual may look a little different than it has for the past year. We anticipate that ritual will reintroduce robes and ritual equipment. So be sure to stay up to date in regards to all the expectations that we have in regards to the ceremonies through communication sent from the central office, by email, or updates made on the website. In regards to the equipment that we discussed, your chapter might have specific recruitment for the pledging ceremony. So you might have that equipment stored away in specific rooms on your campus or specific locations that your chapter has. Again, be aware of campus regulations in regards to gathering, especially as you're preparing to make those room reservations for chapter meetings, for the pledging ceremony, where you will be inviting more students than the ones that are a part of your chapter. And then at the end of the program, the initiation ceremony. Memorizing ceremonies is still an expectation that we have for all of our chapters. So it's never too early to start gathering up those members of your chapter to be a part of the ritual team. If there's a specific officer within your chapter, for example, your chancellor, this could be something that they begin asking brothers in the chapter, like, are you interested in participating in the ritual team? Or maybe your chapter has specific expectations of specific officers to be a part of the ritual team. This is something that, maybe things changed during the last year. Conversations to be had now so that you're prepared to have that pledging ceremony memorized in order to be a chapter of excellence this year. And lastly, I know it was already discussed, the regalia fee will be invoiced at the beginning of the term along with the GCC travel fund. But yeah, just another reminder. All right, an additional resource that chapters should continue or begin to take a little bit more advantage of is connecting with the Delta Sig alumni and faculty that we have, not just in our specific, university areas, but across the country. Just as Erin stated, review what you've done this past year and how can you improve upon that? Or maybe what are some of those practices that got a lot of traction or, brothers really enjoyed within the chapter of, we connected with a chapter from the other side of the country. Think about those events and maybe partnering with other chapters and having those inter-chapter events with alumni across the country and also inviting your faculty. Delta Sig faculty can be one of the best resources that chapters can utilize, especially as the official recruitment efforts begin. The faculty can allow, the recruitment team, the SVP, any brother of the chapter to give a quick 2-minute presentation at the beginning or the end of their classes. These faculty can be the ones that provide the professional advice within recruitment events or the professional events. They can also provide referrals of students to the SVP and potentially give a list of students that are already, being reached out to before you have a real event for recruitment. With the ample opportunities to connect with alumni across the country, think about, potential professional events that you might have or events that you have for the alumni. This is very different within our CMP program in regards to what credit we're receiving. We can have a professional event that is presented by an alumni member, but we could also have an alumni event for our alumni where we're able to recognize them and provide a little bit more connections for them, but for the chapter as well. Founders Day is a great opportunity to do either option. Founders Day is always on November 7th. This is a great opportunity to host an event with alumni chapters in your area, alumni that moved within your university area that you're able to connect with now that everything is kind of getting back to normal. And as it was stated before, we have a lot of national events that are coming up. This could be a great opportunity for your VP Alumni Relations and your fundraising chair to create a campaign in order to increase funds for your chapter leadership fund. So this could be added on a news article that is sent to your alumni newsletters, or this could be presented through alumni events, professional events. So get this out there in order for funds to be raised for your CLF. Now, if you're wondering, well, how much does my chapter's CLF have? This could also be found on the hub under the dashboard module under the last tab, which is labeled the Chapter Leadership Fund. Lastly, another great opportunity as you're recruiting, potential new members, you can also be recruiting new faculty for the chapter. So if there's any faculty that has supported your chapter within the last year or beyond that you believe would be a great resource to the chapter, you can ask them if they would, want to be initiated as a Delta Sig. And I always recommend chapters initiate at least 1 to 2 faculty each year in order to increase those resources and those connections to your college or school of business. All right, so I would like to open the floor to everyone in attendance. If there's anything that we covered that you would like to go a little bit more in depth on, or if there's any specific questions on the topics we covered tonight.
I just want to say thank you, Jasmine and Aaron and Sarah. Good to see you, Aaron. It's been a while. Good presentation.
Awesome,
Sarah, I've never
thank
met
you.
you before too. So,
Yeah, very nice to meet you.
yeah.
Would you mind going over the diversity assessment? It was just a little fast. I want to make sure I understand it.
Absolutely. Jasmine, you want to take that one?